Riversong Vickershin, or Riv as he'd much prefer to be called, is a man who can't forget his past. To make amends, he volunteers for a medical run on the war-torn world of Maltana, where he meets a refugee with no past to remember. Like most bars in this part of the country, Hayek's was little more than a couple of tin roofs and plasticizing. Smoke drifted away into the trees behind it, and the thought of food made Riv's mouth water. It wasn't as though he was going to get much further that evening anyway, so he killed the engine in his jungle hopper and made sure his security code was set before heading into the dim establishment. Two things were immediately apparent. One, that there was indeed food being served, and two, that the music he heard outside wasn't a recording after all. He settled himself unobtrusively near the door and ordered food and drink, a feed that was made that much easier by the lack of selections available to him. The man sitting at the piano was stooped in the shoulders, his slightly ragged blonde hair sticking up at angles that defied gravity. The only time he seemed to look up from the keys was when someone brushed too near, and then it was only a quick darting of his eyes before he dropped them back to the piano. He'd never play a concert hall, but he was good, surprisingly good, for a rundown dump in the middle of nowhere. The arrival of the food, mostly fruit-based, low on meat, and hardly worth getting excited over, was still enough to distract him momentarily from the mystery of a piano in the middle of the jungle. It wasn't the best he'd ever had, but there was something to be said for fresh mango chutney and steamed rice, and even the tiny bits of fish he occasionally happened upon weren't too bad. Riv worked his way through the plate slowly, letting the day's aches and pains settle down. He was in no hurry to leave, especially since the only bed waiting for him was amidst the fuel cells and supplies in the hopper. He closed his eyes and focused his breathing, letting each sense find its own way for a few minutes as he unwound. The piano made the otherwise drab surroundings comfortable, and he ignored the obviously out-of-tune keys. All too soon he was scraping the last grains of rice off the bottom of the bowl. The thought of requesting seconds was a fleeting one, dismissed almost instantly when he saw the decidedly unfriendly glare the serving girl was sending his way. No sense pissing her off. Chances were good he'd be scrounging up breakfast as well. "It was great, thanks," Riv smiled and handed her the bowl. The snort could have been appreciation, or perhaps shy gratitude, but he had his doubts. "Kitchen's closed, or ain't no more, so don't even ask." "Nope, no mistaking that for anything but irritated dismissal." "No, of course not, I wouldn't think of troubling you. But tell me, are you open for breakfast?" The incredulous stare spoke volumes. "This is a bar." The girl spoke slowly, mouth twisted in an unpleasant grin. "You want a freaking restaurant, then you need to go a good long ways from here. You're at the end of the world." The asshole, or whatever the local equivalent would be, was muttered at the end. That was the nice thing about BASIC. Even when the natives picked it up, the regional insults were still easy to spot. It made planning for an eventual beating that much easier. Not that Riv was looking for a beating. Failed pacifist that he was, he still wasn't interested in cleansing himself of pain. Rather than rankle the woman further, he just smiled and lifted his glass. "Thanks for the hospitality." And she caught the sarcasm good on her, but he couldn't tell and didn't care much either way. Glass in hand, he ambled around the place for a few minutes, hearing the far-off roll of thunder as the night storms made their way across the rainforest. There were a couple of dated posters on the walls, and some pictures of what he assumed was the family who owned the place. They were all some variant on the local standards of short and dark, and apparently the scowling was genetic. Nowhere in any of them did he see a stray blonde child, but there was always some tide of missionaries leaving behind unfinished business, and he'd been witness to stranger things. When the song wound to a close, he found himself near the piano. The man playing it didn't look up until Riv leaned one elbow on top of the aging instrument, and then only a slightly fearful dart of his eyes gave away that they were blue. "Do you take requests?" No answer, but another song started up almost immediately, and Riv took that as a no. Shrugging it off, he left a stray coin from his dinner on the piano lid and stood a little farther away, enjoying the music. "You don't talk." He nodded at the bartender, taking a refill on the local rock gut, which tasted pleasantly of fruit punch when it wasn't trying to kill you. "We found him like that one day, just sitting there at the piano, happy as a clam. No ID, he won't tell us a damn thing. I turned him over to the clinic in Pachus, but he doesn't hurt anything, and he keeps people drinking." Riv wondered about the explanation, then remembered that he was still wearing his relief corps tags. It was amazing how many people thought he had some kind of authority just because he trucked in vaccines and seeds.